Hi there, my name is Lauren Rice, and this is my first midterm video for WST 460, Women in the Body. In this video, we are going to focus on the gendered body and what we know as gender, as well as the difference between biological sex and gender, and how gender is reflected upon our physical bodies and reinforced. The main source I will be using for this video is Judith Lorber and Patricia Yancey Martin's Chapter 8 in The Socially Constructed Body. So first, let's get to some basic definitions. Sex, biological sex, that is defined as either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and many other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions and organs. Gender, however, that is defined as a social agreement that is created and maintained by society and through social interactions. Lastly, a social construct, which is what gender is, and we'll discuss that in a little bit, but that is defined as a social mechanism or category created and developed by society. It's a perception of an individual, group, or idea that is constructed through cultural or social practice. So that's how gender is a social construction, because it's reinforced by society, it's created by society. We use sex to base gender off of, but it really has nothing to do with it. And we're going to explore that concept more when we talk about what gender is and what it isn't. So, gender is a spectrum. It's a range of expression. It's how you relate to yourself, and it's your own personal identity. Gender is not just male or female. It's not defined by body parts, sexual orientation, or determined by chromosomes. That's biological sex. Some people may be confused by the idea that gender is a spectrum, especially cis individuals from Western society, like myself. A cis individual is a woman, or it's a female who's born with female reproductive organs and identifies as a woman. And a cis man would be a man who is born with male reproductive organs and identifies as a man. So this whole concept of gender is very easy for those two categories of people, but those aren't the only two categories, and that's very important to acknowledge and to understand and to be sensitive to. Very much like white privilege, cis individuals need to understand heteronormativity and how they have privilege for being able to identify with the gender that matches their biological sex. So, one of my favorite examples of gender outside the female-male binary is from a culture in the Zapotecas region known as Isthmus. And I probably just butchered that pronunciation, but it's spelled Isthmus. And this is one of the last matriarchal societies left. So matriarchal society, that is a family group or state which is governed by a woman who is also the head of the family or the tribe. While modern-day matriarchal societies are rare, there are still a handful that exist today. In this Zapotecan society, there are 3 genders, which can be found in a lot of different societies around the world. But in this particular society, women are the first gender, and they have the highest status and hold the most power. They're in charge of finances, trade, and just, running the household. It's much like our society just flip-flopped. Actually, I remember learning in my Psychology of Women class that it's much like American 1950s, how the men are expected to cook and stay home and clean, and the women bring home the bacon and are in charge of running the financial situation for the household and whatnot. So the second gender in this society would be homosexual, feminine males. And it's interesting because there is a huge stigma against lesbians in this society. But as long as a woman is married and actively procreating or already has a family, she's free to pursue her desires. But if she is not married or willing to have sex with a man and have babies, then there's a big stigma against her. However, this, what we would consider their third gender, the feminine homosexual males, they actually have a higher status in society than the heterosexual masculine males, but which would be also their third gender. But we also must remember that their definitions of masculine and feminine highly differ from ours. They see masculine as submissive, obedient, weak, and intellectually inferior, while femininity is seen as strong, dominant, aggressive, manipulative, nurturing, and intellectual. This clearly shows that gender has different definitions in different parts of the world, and in their society it seems that lesbians and trans men would be the most suppressed group. Another example of a third gender would be the two-spirited individuals in the Zuni Native American tribe. In this tribe, along with other Native Americans, some individuals who identify as masculine or feminine are believed to be two-spirited, meaning they literally have the spirit of each, a man and a woman, inside of them. They are seen as powerful leaders and healers within their tribes, and there is no stigma against whichever sexual relations they choose to have. To be two-spirited is a gift because the person can play two different positions, like on a sports team, which makes that person more valuable and they can be used in many ways to benefit their society. Another interesting way that Zunis approach gender is that they do not assign gender identity until the child is ready, anywhere from 4 to 12 years of age. Also, it's totally okay to change your mind about your gender later on. Change is accepted, understood, even encouraged. And gender assignment is activity-based, not sexually or biologically based. Now that we understand the difference between sex and gender, and how gender is a social construction and seen in many different ways throughout the world, we will examine how these gender norms are further illustrated and reinforced by our own physical bodies. As discussed in the chapter, to say that bodies are socially constructed is not to deny their material reality or universality. Bodies are born and bodies die. Female breasts are usually able to produce milk for infants, whereas male breasts cannot. Female mammals gestate and give birth. Male mammals do not. Male bodies usually have less fat and more muscle than female bodies. But when asked which women's and men's bodies are beautiful, or what are the physical capabilities of human men and women in physical labor and sports, we are asking questions about social practices and judgments that vary by culture and ethnicity, time and place, and are very different for the rich and the poor. Furthermore, members of a society reinforce these gendered norms. They construct their bodies in ways that comply with the accepted views of masculinity and femininity. I mean, just look at the rise of plastic surgery. That's a prime example of women trying to comply to gendered norms. You know, they think that a certain thing looks beautiful because their society tells them that. They try to shape and use their bodies to conform to their culture or racial ethnic groups' expectations of how their bodies should look and perform. We reinforce these gendered norms in so many unconscious ways, constantly. I mean, just look at how we sit, talk, argue, dress, and beyond. I mean, I'm sitting cross-legged right now. That's something that females are seen, you know, it's okay to do that. Not that it's not okay for males to do it, but that's just an example of a gendered norm for me as a woman. You know, this bleeds into every area of our lives, our relationships, everything about our social existence, and our identity is tied to our gender. Our gender is an essential part of our identity. It's on our driver's license, our birth certificate, all of our official paperwork. It's a major determining factor in who we are, which makes it incredibly difficult for a transgender or gender-neutral person to exist within such a gendered space. But on that note, progress has been made, and a great person to check out if you're interested in gender being fluid is a woman named Ruby Rose, who most recently was added to the cast of Orange is the New Black, and she has this video called Transformation, and it shows her transforming from our view of a beautiful woman into a man, because she feels like she doesn't fit into either of the categories. She's somewhere in between. Same with her sexuality. She's neither heterosexual or homosexual. So views like this are really creating a safe space for those who fall outside the gendered norms to exist and express themselves and be able to have an identity. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something new. Have a good night, or day, or morning.